Add Adrian Peterson to the list of people who believe NCAA athletes should be paid.
In the book, Calipari argues the NCAA will collapse unless it reforms.
For many, those reforms call for paying college athletes, and Kentucky basketball coach John Calipari is not alone. South Carolina football coach Steve Spurrier has led this charge for years. Now, more are chiming in. In a recent article, the Tennessean reports Middle Tennessee State University and other Conference USA schools are prepared to pay student athletes a full cost of attendance, over $2,000 per athlete beyond their athletic scholarship, following the lead of the Power 5 conferences, pushing for autonomy within the NCAA. But many schools say paying athletes is not feasible. In this edition of Tennessee Matters, we hear from athletes, coaches, athletic directors, and a conference commissioner concerning pay for play, the issue of unionization and paying college athletes.
I would argue the student athletes that participate in Division I actually receive a beautiful benefit in their education.
Commissioner of the Ohio Valley Conference, Beth DeBush, says a full athletic scholarship affords students the ability to graduate from a fine institution.
If we look at it from a sustaining model, revenue in Division I is overplayed. It's focused on select institutions and select conferences. There are 32 conferences in Division I, and the majority of those really are managed in a way to provide students an opportunity to expand their education through participation.
As a former student athlete who played college football, Austin Peay State University Athletic Director Derek Vandermeer argues against pay for play.
Many people would like to argue that football is this exception, but structurally, colleges and universities are primarily structured to support an academic mission, and that academic mission mandates that we fully support all of our programs, whether it's golf or rowing or tennis or football or basketball. If you look at over 1,000 Division I institutions, only roughly 16 to 20 institutions are what you consider profitable. This perception that there's this great glut of revenue that is available and can be used for this model doesn't work.
While many are for paying college athletes, Tennessee State University head football coach Rod Reed does not see the need.
I think you can open up a whole can of worms that don't need to be opened. I think these kids are getting their college education paid for.
UT Martin offensive lineman Charles Sweeten, a senior from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, says athletes should not be paid.
Going to school, that's your payment. You know, it's a little harsh, but what's the difference between college athletes taking out a loan and somebody that works a 40-hour job a week and having to take out a loan?
Despite what some say, a majority of Division I schools could not afford to pay athletes. This includes Tennessee Tech Athletic Director Mark Wilson, who says they would run a budget deficit if they were paying college athletes.
Their scholarships that they get, and I think that's pretty significant, and that's what college athletics was built upon, providing young men and young women an opportunity to receive a degree from an institution of higher education while having the opportunity to play Division I athletics.
Of course, there are always unexpected expenses, such as the athlete who can't fly home when there is a death in the family because that expense is not part of the scholarship. Tech Athletic Director Mark Wilson says there are ways to help with incidents like this.
Of course, a lot of our student athletes are fairly local to the state of Tennessee. We find ways to use the Student Athlete Opportunity Fund to help students that need that.
There are those who see the other side of this issue. Tennessee State University professor Tommy Boris teaches sports journalism. He says when people see the huge television rights fees paid, he wonders where is the trickle down to the players.
I don't know that people should really have a big problem with it. I know people do because they consider student athletes amateurs, but with that kind of money around, it's hard to keep your amateur status.
Vanderbilt University Athletic Director David Williams does not refer to it as pay for play, instead using this example. Williams says if the cost of attendance at State U is $27,000 and the value of the scholarship is $24,000, this allows the schools in the Power 5 conferences to go up to that $27,000, with the difference coming in a variety of ways.
It could be done in a cash stipend to the student athlete. It may be in more expenses paid. It could be, we will pay for you to go home 2 or 3 times a year.
In a possible response to the controversy surrounding college athletes getting paid, 3 schools, Texas A&M, Northwestern, and Arizona, have decided to sell more generic jerseys as opposed to jerseys associated with individual players.
Austin Peay State University defensive lineman Corey Teague, a junior from Laverne, Tennessee, says he really does not think about getting paid, But he understands the view of some players who do not make money when their jerseys are sold.
If you're using my name and that number and that jersey, because every athlete works hard to get that jersey, to earn it, I can see them being irritated for not getting compensated for it.
The undefeated Northwestern Wildcats.
Today has been a huge success for not only Northwestern football players, but for college players around the nation.
We have seen many athletes go from being unknown to become superstars. But as we learn in this excerpt from ESPN, we have never seen a college athlete join forces with a union.
Huddling with United Steelworkers, as Northwestern University quarterback Kane Coulter did in January.
TSU professor Tommy Boris considers the viability of the unionization of college athletes as brought to light by Northwestern.
If the 5 power conferences can come up with some kind of an agreement to where they give student athletes a stipend, I don't think the union issue is going to be an issue.
But what does this mean for athletes in non-revenue generating sports? OVC Commissioner Beth DeBush says it is important for every school to have a level of balance in the benefits provided to student athletes in order for a school to have both a comprehensive athletic program and gender equity.
Any reaction to give students benefit is going to have to be done in a more global fashion.
Commissioner DeBush adds the autonomy package to let the 5 power conferences and their supporting institutions consider independent legislation primarily focuses on spending on behalf of student athletes.
I wouldn't be surprised if you'd see an expansion to go up to cost of attendance for those students, and then the ability for the remaining conferences to adopt legislation to support a cost for attendance model.
Our score from Chapel Hill. The Tar Heels on Saturday defeat Middle Tennessee State in their home opener 40-20.
Will paying college athletes create an even greater divide between the haves and the have-nots? TSU professor Tommy Boris thinks so.
It's really not fair to put UT Knoxville and Tennessee Tech in the same category. They don't play the same level. They never have and they never will.
Watson Brown is the head football coach at Tennessee Tech. He has worked as a head coach at a variety of FCS and FBS schools, including Vanderbilt, Rice, and Cincinnati. Brown says this is a difficult issue for him, as he is not against athletes getting paid. However, since the advent of the BCS, he worries when, in basketball, smaller schools have made it to the Final Four, that such balance is not the same in college football.
Talking about what maybe they deserve, I've always thought a little spending money would not hurt for these kids. But if everybody can't do it, I just don't see how it's fair to let part of them do it.
Brown adds, the college athlete gets so much more than the average student.
There's so much that they get from being a football player. I think we're leaving some of those things and heading in another direction. But at the same time, when an athlete says, all these dollars are being made off of me playing, there is truth to that.
Watson Brown was also an athletic director at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. He sees the increasing division between schools with larger budgets and those barely in the black.
The further this thing goes, the more dollars they make, the less dollars everybody else makes. I said when the BCS started, I thought that it would end up being a big 3, big 4, big 5, and it's starting to be that way completely.
Vanderbilt's David Williams says it is important for all to work together so you don't create a gap.
We still are all in Division I. If you think of the SEC now, where we'll play 8 SEC football games and then we'll play 1 within the Big Four, we're still looking to play 3 games outside of that. And so, no, these are still our sister universities, and I think we all need to work hard to make sure it doesn't create a big gap.
Austin Peay State University Athletic Director Derek Vandermeer says if we don't want to have an educational model working with college athletics, then we need to have a minor league.
We can't play in education and think that we can have a semi-professional sort of structure and system where we have compensation and contracts and collective bargaining. Either we're education or we're not.
Vanderbilt AD David Williams says cost of attendance means it is important to not lose sight of the college athletic experience.
The primary purpose for these young people to be on this campus is to get an education. And that doesn't change the fact that they may have aspirations of playing college sports or going to the pros. But I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that we stay closely linked to the education missions of the universities.
In an NCAA report, expert John Dennis presented findings from his survey at the Ed O'Bannon trial last year, reported by CBS. Dennis showed 69% opposed to paying money to student athletes on college football and men's basketball teams, in addition to covering their college expenses. For every argument that Johnny Manziel made Texas A&M money, hurdles remain for all involved to make pay-for-play a fiscal reality in college sports. For Tennessee Matters, I'm Terry Likes.